Hey, this is Al McGee with YETicket.com. I'm here with Travis Taute for his new film Indemnity. And man, this is a great piece of film. And did you make this in South Africa?
Yep, 100%. Yes, we did.
Yeah. Well, tell us about the film.
Alrighty. So Indemnity is an action thriller set entirely in Cape Town, South Africa. It is about a fireman who suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder due to an incident in which he was indirectly responsible for, killing some of his co-workers. And the result is that, he's depressed, his life is falling apart, he's really suffering from this trauma in a very, very physical and mental way. And his life is deteriorating on all fronts. And one day he wakes up and his wife has been killed, and all signs point to him having done it. But he isn't so sure. And so he goes on the run to try and figure out who it was and try to bring that person to justice.
Man, that's why I enjoyed that film, because for example, PTSD, that is, people don't realize that even firemen and policemen also, they suffer from that, because I interviewed some from firemen last year. They did a documentary about that, and they don't realize that. So how did you come up with the idea to write this script? Did you know someone? Anything like that?
So there were a couple of things that contributed to this being my first film. One, I knew that I wanted to make an action film, and a very specific kind of action film, an action film that was grounded by character and not necessarily spectacle. And then two, the idea was really sparked by this article that I had stumbled upon, which spoke about, soldiers that have just returned from the Afghanistan war and how they were struggling to reintegrate themselves into ordinary society based on the trauma that they were now living with. And I found that super interesting. And I found the idea and the topic of PTSD, super interesting. I'm fascinated with regards to psychology and mental health. And then when I looked into it, I went down this rabbit hole and I started doing some research, and I, brought it close to home. And it's like you were saying earlier about firemen, is that the statistics here are absolutely crazy in terms of firemen, policemen, basically all frontline workers that are suffering from undiagnosed PTSD. They're living and seeing these, living with and seeing these traumas, these really, really hectic traumas on a daily basis. And yet they're just coping and just going through it and moving past it, and not necessarily taking the time to reflect on their well-being and their emotional well-being and on their psychological well-being. And oftentimes those things pack up until it explodes, which it does in this film.
Now, was this article about the soldiers coming from Afghanistan, were these soldiers coming from South Africa?
Some of them were South African, some of them were American. And it was just, I just remember that article very specifically as being the impetus for me starting to look into PTSD in general, and who it affects, and I found, within there was this really, really interesting story that I'd heard, because I'd also gone and I'd sat with a couple of firemen and just listened to their stories, what their experiences were, what it is that they have to deal with on a daily basis, and what avenues for assistance or help there is, which is often not much. And one of the interesting stories I heard was something, and it had to do with, the fireman was telling me about something as simple as a car accident. Well, this is how it is in South Africa. If there's a car accident between two vehicles and it results in fatalities, you understand what the paramedics are doing there, you understand what the police are doing there. The firemen, beyond maybe having to open the vehicle, are actually responsible for cleaning up the mess at the end of the day. And that harrowing image kind of just stayed with me after I had this conversation. And I felt it was just really, really important for me to use this platform within the space of making an entertaining genre film to be able to address a topical issue that was really important to me.
Yeah, very important. Now let's talk about a couple of cast members.
Yeah.
You chose Jarred Gdawg. I hope I said that right. As Theo, the lead character. Man, why did you choose this guy? But I think I know why from
Yeah.
the action scenes that he's in. But is that why? Is he a big action movie guy there in South Africa? Because I never heard of him before.
Do you know what? No, actually, this was both of our first venture into the foray of action filmmaking. Jarred is an extremely athletic guy. And interestingly, when he came into audition for the film, I didn't know this. This was something that I only found out afterwards, because I said to my producers from the get-go, I don't want to cast someone just based on their physical abilities or their physical appearance. Like, this film is quite emotionally driven, and it needed someone to really bring that gravitas to the performance in order for you to empathize with him and relate to him and go on this journey with him. And Jarred had actually he's been acting since he was a kid. He was actually his first film, if I'm not mistaken, was when he was like 9 years old, and he was a lead character. And about 2-3 years ago, he was in another film, a local film here called Ellen, and I saw him in that and just thought that he was absolutely phenomenal. And he came into this audition, and he had done something so completely different to every other person that I'd seen for this role. And he just brought this just vulnerability and this softness to the character that I was just like, listen, this is it. This is not even a conversation anymore. And he was it. And he was it for me from that moment.
Oh yeah. And also,
Yeah.
you got Gail Mlambo as Detective Renee Williamson in this too. I really enjoyed her character, and I really enjoyed what she did in this film too. Did she have to audition 2 or 3 times, or did you know her? How did she get this role, or how did you choose her for this role?
I had actually Gail, we had been producing a show for Netflix called Blood and Water, and
I
Gail,
love that. I love that series. I saw part 1
amazing.
and 2. I love it. I'm telling you,
That's
I really enjoyed it.
that makes me really, really happy. I'm so glad. And Gail obviously was in Blood and Water, and that was the first time that I'd actually worked with her. But I'd known about her before that. I've always heard of her as an actress, and it was only really seeing her in Blood and Water and seeing her work and talking to her that I was like, I've had this idea for this woman, for this character Renee in mind for such a long time, but I couldn't. It was one of the casting things that I really, really struggled with, in that I couldn't think of potential people that I was like, I needed to see this person for the role. And then I came upon, worked with Gail, and it was kind of just a no-brainer to me. I loved what she did. I love what she did with the character in Blood and Water, and I felt like she really brings this kind of softness and this different kind of energy to this film, and I just I'm so grateful to have been able to work with her, but she was also a kind of no-brainer for me. Now, the interesting thing about Gail is that she can actually speak Afrikaans, which not many people in South Africa can actually speak. Not many Black people in South Africa can actually speak Afrikaans, and she speaks it fluently, which was amazing.
Do you speak it?
Yes, I speak it okay. I understand very, very well, and I can probably answer and respond in English, but sometimes I get stuck on a word or two and it just becomes awkward.
Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get into filmmaking? And tell us a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. So I actually went to film school here in Cape Town, called
Oh, they have a film school there, huh?
Yeah. Actually, you know what? Before I went to film school, I never knew that a film school existed. And it was about, I think, 3 months before, the following year. And I kind of had to make a decision about what I wanted to go pursue as a tertiary education. And I was quite uncertain at the time. I'd always had this love affair with film growing up and writing my own plays and making my own little documentaries, but I never thought that going to film school was ever a possibility, until, lo and behold, I discovered this, this film institution. And then applied, got in, and that was it really. And then it was a wild education in really understanding the ins and outs of filmmaking. And the great thing about film school was that I met my business partners there. We have a production company here in Cape Town called Gambit Films. And the four of us were in the same year together. We graduated together and we left film school together, and we decided that we wanted to start a production company because we always knew we wanted to produce our own films and shift the needle and the perspective, or the global perspective, on what people believe or perceive to come out of South Africa. We wanted to make genre films, or we still do. We want to make genre films that have a global reach. And that's really always been our ambition, but told from a true sort of South African perspective, and true to the stories that we know and the cultures that we know. And so that was 11 years ago. I mean, the first 5 years of the business were, touch and go. But after that, things really sort of ticked up. We did a short film called Number 37, which then went on to do really, really well. And we used that as a proof of concept for a feature, which the feature Number 37 then premiered at South by Southwest in 2017. And then pretty much sort of on the back of the short film as well, we got commissioned to do a local daily drama broadcast for one of our pay channels here in South Africa. And that has been running since November 2016. And we've just recently crossed over 1,500 episodes that have aired on television.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you very much. So that's definitely something that is, that we produce. And then, after Blood and Water, after Number 37, we knew that Netflix was moving into the territory. And so we started engaging with them, pitched a show that was ultimately Blood and Water. And yeah, that was pretty much it. And throughout that time, as a company, we are a bunch of creatives. So we're constantly developing and constantly writing and coming up with new stories and new ideas. And Indemnity was one of them from, quite a number of years ago that we all just couldn't, we just had to see it through. And we wanted to make this film because we wanted to know what it's like to make an action film, because in South Africa, just because of budget constraints, the kinds of budgets that we usually have to work with in terms of the films that we produce, means that we can only make a particular kind of film, and action is notoriously expensive to produce. So we had to be really, really smart about, how we were going to pull this off, which is why you'll see, like in the film, knowing that there needed to be certain action sequences every, 10 minutes. That's the format of an action film. We had to be like, okay, cool. Well, we can't, have multiple car crashes over here, but we can have two guys engaged in a really, really intense physical combat. And so we try to be really, really clever about the specific choices we made when it came to those action sequences.
Yeah, right. Now, who's your favorite director? Do you have any directors that you admire, that you like, that you love? Give me a couple of them that you really admire.
I'll mention three for various different reasons, and this is not in the specific order. One, Christopher Nolan, because I think he is a brilliant filmmaker. I love his films. I love that he grounds his films.
I agree with you.
In a certain kind of realism, but also he's got this sleekness to every single one of his films that are just the highly entertaining pieces of art, and I love it. I'm always thoroughly entertained. I love James Cameron because this is a man who just knows how to change the game and reinvent the game over and over and over again. If I look back at his filmography, I'm like, every single, film that he's come out with has in some way just, completely been a pioneer in the industry and changed the game. And I love that about him. I love that the way he thinks. I would kill for a conversation with James Cameron. But my favorite director, Peter Jackson. The Lord of the Rings, were and remain to this day my ultimate favorite films. And it was a big part of me rediscovering my passion for filmmaking and for cinema. I distinctly remember, watching that first Fellowship of the Rings, I think 7 times in cinema, because I was just so completely gobsmacked by what I just witnessed. And I think, the ability to create worlds and really get people to escape into them, for me, that is something so powerful, and it's something that I hope to do one day. And he did it for me in a way that is just unbelievable. Yeah, wow. So much respect.
Well, let's talk about the business side of this film, Indemnity. Now you have Magnolia. They are producing this and also distributing this film. Yep. How's it working with a great company like that? Because they have some great films. I really enjoy Magnolia.
Yeah, no, listen, it is actually, it's a bit surreal, to be perfectly honest. It is unbelievably amazing. When we heard that Magnolia were interested in having a conversation with us, it was something that was just like, well, this is, we really couldn't believe it, actually. And so to be able to be working with this team of professionals who are just so good at what they do, and they're tastemakers. I look at those films that they, it's very, very selective. It's very specific, and it's very, there's a certain element of, there's a curation to it, and I think that it's an honor to be a part of this body, for Indemnity to sit next to some of the films that Magnolia have chosen to represent and distribute in the past. We are so excited about that, and we really couldn't have asked for a better collaboration.
One last question, Travis.
Yeah.
What do you want the people to get out of your film, Indemnity? What do you want them to say or feel or anything like that? Yeah,
I think for me, and it was really, really important to me that this be viewed as a redemptive story for Theo. That even though he goes through all of this crazy events in the film, that we left with, and he'll never be the same again, but we left with a little bit of hope that at least he's willing to try. I think for me, it was, I want people to be able to reflect, inwards after watching this film and go, is there a little bit of me in Theo? Am I that person that just kind of sweeps everything under the rug? Or do I need to have a hard conversation, and have an open and honest one? Because you know what, that leads to growth, that leads to a trauma that we might have experienced becoming more manageable, becoming smaller and smaller. And that for me, I think is the real power of cinema. If people are able to take that message away, I'd be a happy chap.
Oh, wow. Well, I took a lot away from this film. That's why I really enjoyed it. And then when I had the opportunity to interview you, Travis, I was very happy. And I want to thank you very much for coming to Your Entertainment Ticket, and thank you for taking some time with me, Al McGee.
No, thank you.
I want to thank Magnolia also. Well, thank you very much, and I love to keep in touch, and I love to see more and more of your work. And like I say, Blood and Water, man.
Awesome.
Oh man, keep doing the great work, man. Just keep doing it.
Thank you so much, Al. We'll try. All
right. Thank you very much.
All right. Chat soon. Thank you so much. All right. Cheers. Bye-bye.
This is your entertainment ticket. Latest and greatest.